The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. Welcome to On the JoB with your host, Linn Parish, editor of the Journal of Business. On the JoB is about the Inland Northwest business community, where you'll hear firsthand the backstories from the men and women reporters at the Journal of Business. On the JoB is brought to you in part by McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. Here's Linn.
Hi, welcome to On the JoB. I'm Linn Parish, the editor of the Journal of Business. We just came out with our last issue of the year of 2017, and since we're at the end of the year, we thought we'd try something a little different with this podcast. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Linn.
Yeah. So Kevin and I, what we did was we went through the news from the last year, and we both came up with our top 5 business stories for 2017, and we were just going to go through those and talk a little bit about each of our lists. They're a little bit different, a little bit of overlap, as you would expect, but a little bit different. So, Kevin, you want to start with your number 5?
Definitely.
Work our way down.
This was one that we had been tracking about a year ago at this time. Mm-hmm. Triumph had announced that it had planned to sell its plant out on the West Plains.
Sure.
And as the year progressed, didn't hear a great deal of information. And then finally, I got a tip from a source out there saying that they had decided that they were going to stay put, that they were going to continue operating the plant. And that results in, 400 jobs staying in Spokane.
Well, that's a great one. Now, for those of us those who might be listening who aren't familiar with Triumph, can you tell us a little bit about what they do?
Triumph was the former Boeing plant.
Right.
Triumph is a maker of airplane parts, aerospace sector employer, I should say,
yeah. And
has had a substantial presence in the Spokane area. The loss or reduction in possible employment would have been disastrous for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, that's a great one. And having those jobs staying in the Spokane market is a good story. To give credit where credit's due, Kevin broke that story and was days ahead of the competition on that one, and worked out really well for us.
It did, and the thing that was nice, the information that we had received gave great insight as to why they had decided to stay. In large part, they were unable to find a buyer that could have occupied that plant. But in addition to that, the plant was doing well. It occupies a significant part of Triumph's portfolio, and kudos to the corporation for recognizing that we're going to stay put.
Great. Now, for my number 5, what I chose was Red Lion Hotels moving its corporate headquarters to Denver. And it doesn't have the impact of the Triumph story because Triumph preserved 400 jobs. And the number of jobs lost with the move of that corporate headquarters was relatively minimal. The company had told its executives who had a presence in Spokane that they could stay here. They still operate a regional office, and of course, they still have their hotel properties here. But the way it went down was so interesting to me. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. It was very, for lack of a better word, stealthy.
Uh-huh.
It just came out of nowhere. There was no advance warning. We hadn't heard any discussions from our contacts and sources, and it was was it a quarterly report, if I'm not mistaken?
It was, yeah. They didn't even announce it. It was buried in a earnings report for the second quarter performance, which came out in late summer, where they had announced that effective the date of the earnings release, their headquarters were in Denver. Mm-hmm. So I guess the part that made it interesting, even though it wasn't a big change in terms of the number of people working in Spokane, was we're talking about a company whose roots go back a good 80 years in Spokane.
There's a lot of symbolism to that kind of a departure. And imagine waking up one day and, this entity that your community has had a relationship with is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in that sense, in that situation, we didn't even know about it. Like you said, it's buried deep in an earnings report, no advance warning, no media release to say this is taking place. It was, it felt very Dark Knight Batman, like they were just gone.
I remember you and I joked about, and it wasn't like this, but like the Colts leaving Baltimore in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
It wasn't exactly like that, but it had that kind of vibe to
Right.
it. Good thing we read all the way through those releases.
Definitely.
So for my number 4, I chose Multicare completing its acquisition of Rockwood Health System, which includes Deaconess Hospital, Valley Hospital, and Rockwood Clinic. That transaction was completed July 1st. It was reported that they were buying it in late 2016, so the completion wasn't a big surprise, but it did mark a big change in our healthcare system. Those hospitals and that health network converting back from for-profit to nonprofit, and a new player coming into our market in a really big way.
Right. This is the face. This is the future of not only acquiring in healthcare, but we're seeing this across all sectors.
Mm-hmm.
Companies, nonprofits are getting together in ways that are just, in so many respects, unprecedented in an effort to stay competitive in the marketplace.
Yeah, and the previous owner, we had been reporting fairly regularly about their earnings reports and their financial challenges, and the fact that they had been selling off properties in other markets. It was Community Health Systems, based in Tennessee, has properties in many parts of the country, and so to have someone coming in and buying those properties, a Tacoma-based company as well with Multicare, it really was in my mind, almost like a sign of hope for that system.
Right.
The second biggest in Spokane.
Right. Definitely. To my number 4,
Yeah.
I selected Avista's proposal for the U District project,
Mm-hmm.
the Catalyst project, as it has been named. We're talking about a series of buildings that are going to occupy a variety of spaces, upwards of 700,000 square feet. That was announced in March,
Mm-hmm.
Early March of this year. And when you take a look at what is developing in that East Sprague area, 500 to 700 block, coupled with the growth of Washington State University, Eastern Washington, that is a corridor that is just red hot right now.
It sure is. And where they're talking about building that is right at the south landing for the pedestrian bridge, the U District pedestrian bridge that's under construction right now. Had a bit of controversy to it over the years, but now it's underway, and man, that thing's big, and it extends that university district farther south, which has a lot of potential.
It's really striking. We've talked about this before. I moved to Spokane at the beginning of 1994.
Right.
And I specifically remember that area as, there was nothing there.
Right.
Run down, dilapidated, and to see that area really beginning to flourish, we can, from our office, drive south on Sherman, and at some point here in the near future, we're going to, have a great view of that bridge from our office space.
Yeah, and we might be able to see the Catalyst project as well,
Right.
once it's built out. Yeah, pretty exciting stuff. In that neighborhood where we are, we're at the corner of Third and Sherman. I always tell people about 4 blocks down from Dick's Burgers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody knows where Dick's is.
And so, but all the projects that are going on in that neighborhood, Catalyst hasn't even, they haven't even broken ground on Catalyst yet. And but all the other projects that are going on in that neighborhood, it's pretty interesting.
It is.
Yeah. So let's see, what's next? My number 3.
You're number 4.
My number 3.
Is it your number 3? Now we jump to my number 4.
So we did my number 4.
Your
my,
5.
My 4
5.
was multi-care.
Your 4 was multi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you want to
So
do?
we're going your 3.
Or your 3.
Let's go.
I'll go my 3. So I had a project-related one for my 3. It was the Rid Path project starting, and so the sort of turning point for that project was some tax credits that the developer received to get them finally rolling on that. I think it was $15.9 million in $15.6 million in help that they got on that, and now they've started developing that. It harkens back memories to a different type of project, but when the Davenport had been dark for a number of years, and then work started on that.
You bringing up the Davenport is a great point. I wasn't ready to just yet put the Rid Path into my top 5, simply because I'm an impact guy. What will this time next year, that impact might be substantial, and we'll see some direct results. I wasn't ready to put it into that list just yet. I wrestled with this one.
Sure.
It is substantial, and the effect that project has the potential to have in that area, it's just another continuing piece of this downtown that is continues to flourish. And I like the fact, I really appreciate the fact that the developer is being mindful of that demographic of people who are often priced out of downtown housing.
Yeah.
I think that is a real welcome relief for those who would find benefit in living in the downtown corridor.
Yeah. So what they're doing is they're taking hotel rooms and turning them into very, very small living quarters. So a large percentage of it, and they want to use workforce housing, but it's low income housing is what they're creating there, and so this could be a very interesting experiment.
Exactly.
Are we going to see an innovative way of creating workforce or low-income housing?
Exactly.
Or is it going to be the Otis 10 years from now? I imagine it's more the former than the latter.
Right.
But it's just nice to see this property that has been dormant, and who, if you follow the finances of it through the last 10 years, it's just been a mess.
Yes.
It's nice to see that coming back to life as a functional building, regardless of what's going on.
Exactly. A sense of order is definitely needed there.
Yeah. So let's see. You're on number 3.
My number 3, yes, we
Let's
got
hear
that
it.
squared away.
Yeah.
This was to start the year, Fairchild Air Force Base being passed over for the placement of the KC-46As. As the county's largest employer, that would have been, especially with the economy rolling along the way that it is, that would have been substantial. That would have been a substantial catch for the region. So I had that one. I was debating on placement of it, but ultimately I felt like that felt like a number 3 spot.
Yeah, that's good. I actually have it at number 2 on my list.
Okay.
And so Fairchild's traditionally a KC-135 base, air refueling tanker base, and it's the KC-46A is considered the next generation tanker. And so the effort was really afoot to land those. I think one of the most interesting parts of that, though, is what happened after that announcement. A few months later, they started moving more KC-135s to Fairchild, and once that transition is complete, which I don't believe it is yet, it's going to be the largest air refueling tanker base in the U.S. So it was a loss on the one hand,
Right.
but we're still seeing growth out there.
Exactly, and that speaks to, I mean, the Department of Defense's confidence in what Fairchild Air Force Base means to it. I remember, let's see, again, I hate to date myself, but it's inevitable.
Yeah, right.
There were mid to late 90s discussions of shuttering that base altogether. Fairchild has made a 180-degree turn from those days. You don't hear those conversations anymore.
Nope.
So I would call that refueling, that expanded refueling. That's not even a consolation prize. That is a substantial coup for Fairchild.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you stated, and as is reaffirmed in our latest issue with our largest Spokane County employers list, there's just short of 6,000 people working out there, both
Right.
civilians and enlisted. So that impact is really irreplaceable. So,
Right.
so it's great to see health out there.
Yes.
All right, so we just blew through my number 2. What's your number 2?
My number 2, this was another press conference called in the middle of July. Avista announced that it was going to be acquired by a Canadian concern, and when you hear that news at the press conference, I remember thinking, "Wow, this is substantial." But ultimately, we learned that Hydro One is going to allow Avista to stay put and to continue its operations in Spokane. No layoffs, no downsizing. They are essentially pooling their resources, and the explanation that has continued to be given to the media, to the public, is that, again, similar to going back to one of our earlier items, this is multi-care.
Multicare, yeah,
Multicare,
sure.
my apologies. This is the way of doing business now, partnering, pooling your resources to stay relevant. You either get bigger or find yourself struggling to continue to operate in a way that is cost effective for your customers. The more resources that these entities can put together, the greater is it's being explained to us, the greater the benefit to the customer.
Yeah.
Time will tell. In these kinds of situations, you're always a little bit worried about autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Will Avista continue to operate in the way that it has, throughout the course of its history as a self-sufficient company?
Sure.
Time will tell, but all indications seem to indicate that might be allowable. And the fact that, going back down to number 4 on my list, the proposed U District project, if you know that this acquisition is on its way, you're probably not going to be launching that kind of a project. It's certainly not at the scope that it has been announced. So,
Sure.
As of yet, there isn't any reason for us to believe that Avista is going to see a scaling back, if you will, as a result of this acquisition.
Yeah. So with the acquisition, Hydro One's acquisition of Avista, which was massive, by the way, I think it was 5.3 billion
5.2,
US.
yes, yeah.
And so, so what we're losing is a publicly traded corporate headquarters. Leadership is supposed to remain local. Workforce is expected to remain at its current size. And as you referred to, it's not just catalysts. They have a number of capital projects
Right.
that they have underway that we've reported on over the course of the year. So we lose that publicly traded corporate headquarters, but as when it's operating as a subsidiary of Hydro One, it will remain based here,
Correct.
which is a good
Right.
thing with local leadership. I'll tell you, I had Avista as my number one, and I'm going to sort of expose myself as a geek, I guess, a business reporting geek. But I think that's one of those things where I'll remember where I was when that news came down, because we talked about Red Lion being a bit of a surprise, but this one hit me like an H-bomb. I mean, it's something I didn't see coming at all. Maybe I should have, considering that Avista's on the smaller side for publicly traded investor-owned utilities, and that it could have been an acquisition target for years. Maybe I should have seen that, but man, when that hit, it was a complete shock to me. Oftentimes we hear about that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Hamel's acquisition, we've been looking at that for 2 years, 3 years before it actually happened, and but Avista, that came out of nowhere for us.
Quick story. At the end of that press conference, myself and some other media members from different stations, different outlets in town, we were milling around in the parking lot, and we were all standing there looking at each other like, did you have any indication that this was coming? No,
Yeah.
I thought we had no idea. So we weren't the only ones in the dark
Right.
on that one.
Yeah.
You were not caught off guard by the H-bomb. There were other media outlets that were as well.
Yeah.
They did. It's hard to keep that kind of news under wraps. They did it.
Yeah.
I was disappointed that they did it. I really was.
Yeah, I was too. Okay, so we blew through my number one. What do you have at number one?
My number one, and I'm an impact guy.
Yeah,
I
sure.
go back to what is having the greatest impact on our community. And that is construction activity. Overall construction activity. In 2016, Spokane County approached the record construction activity of 2013. More than $1 billion of building permits for projects that were valued. Going back to earlier, I had stated that I moved here at the beginning of 1994. It's been it'll be 24 years next month, as a
Sure.
matter of fact. I've not seen this kind of construction. I've not seen this kind of growth since I've been here.
Right.
And though 2013 maybe it edges 2016, numbers-wise, I wonder, projects-wise, I've never seen this many cranes in the sky. I've not seen this level of road construction, not related to potholes.
Right.
Down to one-lane detours as a result of new projects. For me, my nearly quarter of a century in Spokane, I've not seen this. That's
Sure.
my number one story. And the addition of what that does to the economy in the way of work, employment, future impact, we still won't know what that will be. But Spokane is doing things that I've just not seen before.
Yeah, that's great. And when we looked at the numbers, wasn't it just a $200,000 difference between that year and 2013? Yeah.
$1.026 billion versus 1.023.
Yeah. And so that's basically a house.
Exactly.
Not even a big house. So
But you're the editor now. You can make up for that difference, right?
No, not just yet. I will tell you the one thing about 2013 that was different from right now is that there were a lot of huge projects then. So there was the Davenport Grand Hotel
That's
was
right.
under construction.
That's
And that was a $130 million project in
That's
itself.
correct. Right.
There was a convention center expansion going on, and there was not the McCarthy Athletic Center, the new student union building on the Gonzaga.
Pence. The Pence?
No, not Pence,
Pence.
but it was that Hemmingson Center. The
Hemmingson,
Hemmingson
thank
Center.
you.
Yeah, and we're getting old.
Yeah.
And so you had some huge home run hitters that were
Right.
anchoring that year. And this year, there are some tens of millions of dollar projects, but not that core of
Exactly.
So it gives the appearance, rightfully so, of more.
More
going on.
Widespread,
Yeah.
From one end of the county to the other.
Yep.
There's a lot going on.
All right, good stuff. So you can read about all of these things in the Journal of Business at SpokaneJournal.com. We also have our book of lists coming out at the first of the year, which will have a timeline in it, a very small part of the book, but that will outline all of the big news stories from this past year. So check that out. And thanks, Kevin. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All
My
right.
pleasure.
All right. Happy holidays, everybody.
On the JoB is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. On the JoB is brought to you by our friends at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. Ask Linn a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys